Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I spent a lot of my time this morning working on this table here, and I want to use this, inshallah, for a future website I'm making, which will help a lot with determining how much time you have to pray salahs, when they start, when they end, in a nice visualization. I don't want to give that much details until I actually start building it, or maybe when I'm done. But what I needed to know was, how do I calculate the times for the salahs based on the authentic evidence, based on scholars or students of knowledge, based on the actual sun, rather than just a clock. Because, for example, here, this is one of the masjids in my local community, and actually they own two masjids, MCA and Masjid al-Nur. And you can see here they have the timetable for prayer, but for some reason MCA says Asr starts at 2:40, and Masjid al-Nur says Asr starts at 3:22, which is 42 minutes in between each other, and this can be confusing. And I remember somebody told me they're both right, and that's not correct, because imagine, for example, you come home from work and you need to pray Asr. You need to pray Dhuhr. Let's say you get home at 3 and you pray Dhuhr because that's when you get home. According to MCA, your Dhuhr is not accepted. It's not counted. Or it may be accepted, but it's not at the right time. And according to Masjid al-Nur, you prayed Dhuhr and it was acceptable. It was correct at the correct time. Because, you can't pray salahs out. You can't pray the prayer outside of their time. So if you pray Dhuhr in between these two masjids' calculations, then according to one masjid it's accepted, and another one it's not accepted, or you're sinful. And this is impossible. You can't be, good and bad at the same time. That's impossible. I'm nothing against the masjid. I'm just saying that there's some differing here. So back here, I basically wanted to put the correct timings, and I wanted to compare what I was able to calculate compared to Al-Masjid Al-Awwal, which is Mr. Richardson's masjid, which you can see here. They have, for example, Fajr, and then Dhuhr and Asr, and you can see in this row I have highlighted here, which is today, they have these salah times. So how did I calculate these? I'm trying to find the formula here. So how did I do it? Well, I found this website here, Sunrise Sunset, where they will give the sun's location for any physical location on Earth. So here, when you go to one of these URLs, and they give you this program-friendly result of the sun's location. So this is an interface that a program can interact with really easily. So this is meant for programs to read, but we can read it as humans as well. So here I gave it a longitude and latitude. You can see here in the URL, longitude and latitude. And I basically went to Google Maps and I searched for a Masjid al-Awwal, and I took the longitude and latitude for that masjid and I pasted it in here. And then they gave me back the sunrise time, the sunset, when the sun is straight up in the sky, how long a day is, and a bunch of other things, which can be pretty useful. And I wanted to use this to calculate the times of the 5 daily prayers, when they start and when they end. And my calculations will be based on the Quran and the Sunnah. Because, at least in the Sunnah, the angel Jibreel alayhi salam, he prayed with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam one day, and he prayed the 5 daily prayers at their earliest times. Then he came back another day, and he prayed the 5 daily prayers at their latest times. And he told the Prophet ﷺ that between these two times is what the prophets used to pray. So then we have, once we look at that description, we can tell basically the starting and the ending of each of the salahs. So you can imagine that a nice visual can be made with these once they're put on some kind of graph or something. So for example, the Fajr Salah. So I was listening to a lecture by Musa Richardson on this topic, and he went over the 5 daily prayers and when they start and when they end. And Fajr basically starts when the sun rises, or before the sun rises, when the sky is lit up from the sunrise. And you can see here they have the sunrise. And the sunrise's timing is actually the timing for when Fajr ends. Once the sun rises or starts to rise, that's when Fajr ends. And I have my notes here. You can see here, Fajr is basically when the sky starts to light up from the sun coming up. And then it ends when the light of the dawn begins to spread, which basically means when the sun rises. So, and you can see here actually, this is a good visual by timeanddate.com, where they describe the different types of sunrises. So here's, the ground here, and here's the sun coming up. The day is about to start. So when the sun reaches this point, it's still nighttime. You can't really differentiate between nighttime and when it's about to become daytime. Then as the sun starts to come up, the day starts getting lighter and lighter to the point where it's almost as if it's up. Then the sun comes above the sky, and then that's when Fajr is finished, when the sun starts to come up. So the nautical twilight is when the sun is at its location to pray Fajr. When the nautical twilight Fajr comes, that is when it is halal to start praying Fajr. That's when Fajr starts. So this website here, once I give it a longitude and latitude, then it can give me the when the nautical twilight begins. So here it is, and then you can imagine. Well, I'll get to that later actually. But the nautical twilight here, I was gonna say you can imagine putting anyone's location here. You just ask them for any longitude, latitude. We can get the timing, but I'll show you a little surprise at the end, inshallah. So here the nautical twilight begins, and it says here 10:58 a.m. for al-Masjid al-Awwal. Now that's freaking wrong, but actually it's just because of the time zone issue. So here, let me go back to my table. I put here 10:58 a.m., which is what this website said. Then I converted it to the correct time zone, which you can see on the top left here. I just subtracted 5 hours. Because Masjid al-Awwal is in Eastern time, which is -5. And then I compared this calculation with what the masjid themselves say is when Fajr starts. So this is their timetable here on their website. And you can see here Fajr starts at 5:58. And alhamdulillah, this was accurate to what this website says, to where the sun is, basically, according to this website. So, and then when does Fajr end? Fajr ends basically when the sun is rising. So here, they say the sun rises at 11:59, 35 seconds a.m. So that's what I put here. Then I subtracted 5, and I got 6:59 a.m. And Masjid al-Awwal says 6:58 a.m. And it's only off by 1 minute, and that's amazing. And actually, to be even more accurate, this is, let me look at it right here. This is actually 35 seconds in. So if you want to round, this would be 12 a.m. Or I guess, well, sorry, forget what I just said, because it seems this would have been 12 a.m. This would have been 7 a.m. This would have been 2 minutes off. But I guess that maybe I shouldn't round. I'm not really sure. Regardless, it's only off by 1 minute. Then we come to Dhuhr. And Dhuhr is when the sun is straight up in the sky, known as the solar noon. And it's when it goes a little past it. And Musa Richardson mentioned in his lecture that I will link, inshallah, that it's past a shoelace's length of the zenith, something like that. So solar noon, according to this website, is at 5:03 p.m. And then back here, I typed 5:03, and I converted that to Eastern time, and it was only off by 1 minute, which is still amazing. When does Dhuhr end? Dhuhr ends basically when Asr starts. And Asr starts when the sun, or let me go to my notes. This is from the lecture I listened to. Dhuhr ends when the shadow of a thing is equal to its length. So I have here the same thing. When the sun is at a 45-degree angle. And Dhuhr time is when the sun is straight up in the sky. Maghrib time is when the sun is straight to the right. So you can imagine the sun, pretend here is the angle. When the sun is straight up into the sky, that's when Dhuhr is about to start. And when the sun is setting below the ground, that's when Maghrib starts. And this 45-degree angle here is when Asr starts. So I went here, and for Asr, or for the end of Dhuhr, same thing. I took the average, or the halfway point, between when the sun is straight up in the sky, which is when Dhuhr starts, and when the sun is setting, or has set, which is when Maghrib starts. And in between these two times is when Asr starts. And from that, I got 7:35 p.m. Converting that to Eastern time is 2:35, and the masjid on their website says Asr starts at 2:46. And so there's a problem here now. So the masjid basically starts 10 minutes. Here I have the difference here. They start 10 minutes after the midpoint of Dhuhr and or from Dhuhr and Maghrib. But Musa Richardson himself said it's in the midway point. So why is there a 10-minute difference? And you can see even in the Maghrib time, it's pretty accurate as well to the website. So I don't actually know the reason why there's a 10-minute difference here as well. But I do have a theory, which is that since Dhuhr ends at the same time Asr starts, then perhaps what they're trying to do is do a little safety margin here, because this is exactly 10 minutes. So imagine, Dhuhr ends at 2:35, and Asr starts at 2:35. So if you pray Dhuhr at 2:35, then it's risky, because Dhuhr ends and Asr starts, but Dhuhr is valid at that time, but it's risky because, I'm not sure what the best way to explain it, but you're taking a risk if you pray Dhuhr exactly at that time. So perhaps what they're doing is just praying 10 minutes after, just to be safe, just to be away from Dhuhr. And perhaps that's what this time here is. So maybe that's why there's a 10-minute gap. So that's where I got this calculation from. When does Asr end? Asr ends between the beginning of Asr and at the beginning of Maghrib. And that's what I did here. You can see I just took the beginning of Asr and the beginning of Maghrib, and I subdivided it by 2, which got me 8:51. Convert that to Masjid al-Awwal's time, which is 3:51, and this is 5 minutes away from Masjid al-Awwal, or 6, but I guess they're close enough. They maybe rounded because it says 5 here. And this is only different because of this calculation here, which is off by 10 minutes. Because when you divide by 2, it becomes 5. So if this is fixed, or if I figure out what happened here, then this becomes accurate as well. And maybe they're just doing a 10-minute safety margin. Maghrib starts when sunset happens. So here, we can go to the sunset, 10:07:59 p.m. So I pasted it here, 10:07:59 p.m. And it was really close to Masjid al-Awwal. They're only off by literally a second if this is 0 seconds, but it's 0 still. Maghrib ends when Isha starts. And Isha starts when the sun, or let me go here to my notes. And inshallah, I will link the lecture. Maghrib starts when Isha starts when the sunset's light is all gone. So when the light of the sunset is no longer in the sky, then Isha has now started. And Isha ends at 1/3 or 1/2 of the night. Because the angel Jibreel alayhi salam, he when he came the second time and prayed, he prayed Isha at the third, at the end of the first third of the night. And so what I would think was that's the end of Isha, but he didn't explicitly say that. At least I don't remember he did. Alayhi salam. But there is another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said explicitly that the Isha prayer is until half the night has passed. So then back here, you can see Al-Masjid al-Awwal already has their times. But then Isha starts when the light of sunset is gone. So how am I going to calculate that? So what I noticed here is this here is the Fajr time, the nautical twilight, which is basically when the sun's lighting of sunrise comes. And there's a little more signs, kind of different than this one. But how did Al-Masjid al-Awwal calculate it? So this here is when Fajr starts. But then I noticed that when the nautical twilight ends, which you can see here, so Fajr starts here, and then it ends up here, but this specific sunrise ends right here at civil dawn, whatever that is. So that's when the nautical twilight ends at this point. And then I noticed here the nautical twilight ending is completely different than the nautical twilight beginning. You would think they're like 10-20 minutes apart, but they're off by like 12 hours or something. So what's going on here? Well, it took me some time, but what I realized is this nautical twilight ending, which according to this diagram here, is for the sunset. So these same phases here are not just for sunrise, but they're for sunset. So imagine the sun's rising, right? It goes here, it goes past these phases, and it goes up. But then when it gets to the other side of the earth, it's gonna go back down. So when it goes down, these three phases come back, right? It looks like Fajr again. So when the sun's coming down, 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 when it goes here, it's under civil twilight. When it goes here, it's the nautical twilight. And then when the nautical twilight ends, then it enters the astronomical twilight. So here, I just took the nautical twilight ending and I compared that with Al-Masjid al-Awwal's Isha time here. And then, so here they have 11:09 p.m. I put that here. I converted it to their time zone and it came out almost exactly the same. So this is how I calculated when the Isha starts. When does Isha end? Isha ends basically when the night is at its halfway point. So how did I calculate that? Well, basically you can see here, I just took the time between Maghrib, which is when the sun's underground, and Fajr, which is when the sun is rising or about to rise. So this here the sun's on the right, here the sun's on the left. The midpoint between that, I took that and I got 4:33 p.m. Universal Time. Converting that to Eastern Time is 11:33, kind of close to midnight. And this is exactly what Al-Masjid al-Awwal said. And I like to use them as the authority here because they have Musa Richardson. May Allah preserve him. And alhamdulillah, I got 0 here, which means no difference. So this is amazing. And if my guess is correct, then, and they're just trying to make a 10-minute safety time here to split between Asr and Dhuhr, then really this whole thing becomes extremely accurate, which is amazing. So all I need to do is basically grab a person's longitude and latitude. I can use these numbers and I can calculate the timings for the salah. Now, how do I get these numbers? Because I don't want imagine if you use it, I'm not going to ask you to enter these. It's kind of annoying. Well, on a web browser, on most modern web browsers, you can imagine, so if I go here, that if let me take away this picture. Here I can enter code. 1 + 1 is code, give me 2. One of the things I can enter is I can tell the browser to give me the location of the user, of the person using my website. And then from there, obviously I can't just get it. You have to give me permission. So I can say get the current position of the person. And once you give me that position, I'll just log it. I'll just output it. You'll see what I mean. So now when I run this code on a website, you can see up here that it'll ask you permission for the app to get your location. And if you press allow, oopsies, there you go. I misspelled position. There you go. So allow, and it gives me this response here where I get the longitude and latitude and longitude of the user. So imagine I can get this, I plug it into here, and then I get these numbers, and then I can calculate the prayer times extremely accurately based on the sun's actual position. So inshallah, I'll do this in the future. But in the meantime, I hope you gained something out of this. And thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.